Hey, it's Jackie from 40 Thrive. Before we get started, I want to invite you to join me for the Confident Women Rising Summit. It is a free online event happening April 20th through the 24th, and it's hosted by Courtney Townley of Grace and Grit. She talks with 16 leading experts about what it really takes to reclaim your health, your happiness, and your confidence after 40. In fact, she's going to be joining us live in the free and private 40 Thrive Facebook group. So definitely go over there and check out the show notes to register for this free, incredible event.
You're listening to the 40 Thrive podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Welcome to another episode of 40 Thrive. A while back, I was asked to participate in a brand new project called Grown Woman Life. I was absolutely honored to be part of it. As someone passionate about elevating the lives of women over 40, it was a no-brainer, really. Grown Woman Life's mission is to highlight, engage, educate, and inspire bold, brilliant, badass professional women over 40. The bonus was I got to connect with Grown Woman Life founder, Rocki Howard. Rocki is a force of nature. She's whip smart, so fun to be around, and as real as they come. I love everything Rocki stands for, and I'm excited for you to meet her. Before we get started, you know 40 Thrive was created to support women over 40 in life and business. I've heard time and time again how the experts and the incredible women on the podcast have made such a huge impact on the lives of women 40 plus listening all over the world. But did you know you can actually support 40 Thrive? That's right. We've recently created a Patreon page where you can support the show and get some really cool bonuses. And it just starts at $3 a month. If you love the podcast, check out the show notes. It would mean the world to me. Also, if you haven't hit subscribe, now would be the perfect time to do that. You'll get updates whenever we publish a new episode, including bonus episodes you will not find unless you subscribe. You'll never have to search for the 40 Thrive podcast again, so you can check one thing off your list, right? I know you could be doing many things with your time. The fact that you press play is something I do not take for granted. This show was created for you and will continue to evolve and grow in many ways, always with you in mind. All right, you've waited long enough. Here's my chat with Rocki Howard. Rocki, welcome to 40 Thrive.
Hey, Jackie, I'm so excited to be here. You know 40 Thrive is my jam, and you are one of my favorite people, so I'm so excited to be here.
Well, it feels like a reunion because I was lucky enough to be one of the first guests on your podcast, Grown Woman Life. So before we get into all of the great stuff, what is a grown woman? What is a grown woman life? What does it look like?
Well, I believe, and seriously, we tagged this, but there are certain core principles behind it. And I think it's very reflective of who I think grown women are. And one is I think grown women are bold. I think they're brilliant. And I think they're badass, right? They have lived enough life to know who they are, and they're not afraid to walk in it, right? And I think we have 5 core big principles, right? Which is grown women actively cash in on life's lessons. So, all of that stuff that we've lived through, we're now cashing it in and saying, I've learned from that, and here's how I'm moving forward.
I love that. Wait, let's just really hit that the way it deserves. Actively cashing in on life's lessons.
Absolutely.
So that's not all the good stuff. That's the crap we've been through.
That's the
and we're
real
cashing
crappy.
in.
Right. And we've earned the right to cash in. That's the really crappy stuff. Right. And so, you and I talked about some of those things on the podcast. Right. And it's incredible when you can get to that point in your life and you look back at something and you go, oh my gosh, this is what I learned. This is my aha moment. And I don't have to go back there. Right.
Right. And we don't necessarily recognize it in the moment. But I think as grown women, we are starting to recognize it soon after the moment. It doesn't take us dozens of years like it used to. Now we're sort of like closer to the moment when we realize that there are lessons to be learned.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes you're even in it and you're able to say, boy, this situation is kicking my tail, but I know that I will get to the other side of it. And I know I'll learn something and I will be okay. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. So what's another core component?
Grown women live life from the inside out, right? So I know that when I was younger, it was my view of self had everything to do with my external view of self. What does my hair look like? How much do I weigh? How much what do I look like? What do people think about me? I don't want to upset anybody. It's all that kind of stuff. Right. And
Yes.
look, I am not going to lie and say I don't still care about those things, but I'm very clear that they don't still define me. And I think grown women start to look from the inside out and they start to live from the inside out and they start to become more comfortable with that. Like, don't you think so?
I absolutely think so. And, somebody will refer to that as like giving 0 Fs, but it's not that you don't give them anymore. It's just that they're not dictated by what other people think.
Absolutely.
In some ways, we care more about what's important and we care less about what's not important.
And you know what? That's a perfect lead in to the next principle, which is
awesome.
Grown women dominate their brands, right? So it's not that we don't care about what people think. It's that we're making conscious choices about how we're going to move in the world, how we're going to be received in the world. And we're also okay that everybody's not going to like our special brand of crazy, right?
Yes. And you and I have talked about this. Like, that's one of the things I say to anyone who'll listen, that you are not for everyone. And so the more authentic you are to yourself and for yourself, you will care less that you're not for other people.
Absolutely. And don't you find that you have more energy, that energy you used to put into, oh my God, that person doesn't like me. Oh my God, what did I do wrong? Oh my gosh, like, what did I do? Like, all that energy that you used to put into doing that, you now refocus into saying, I'm going to put that energy into the people who like my brand of crazy and have complementary crazy and focus on who I am versus like the people who don't like me. Because there's always going to be people who don't like you.
Right, right. Complementary crazy. That is my new favorite term.
Telling you. Because, there's people that were the same brand of crazy and you just, and then there's people who, you're not the same brand of crazy as I am, but we are complementary crazy and it really works, kind of like yin and yang, right? So
yes,
I believe in crazy and I believe in honoring and respecting other people's crazy, but some of it is not the same as mine and some of it doesn't complement mine, and that's okay. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So what's the next one? Share. This is
so
great.
We've got 2 more, right? And one is the one that I think I'm not sure we spend enough time focused on, right? And that's that grown women create an impactful and joy-filled life. I think a lot of times as grown women, we are so focused on the impact. I think we're at that place where we want to have impact, but I'm not sure that we take enough time to just focus on the joy in life. So,
yes.
if your followers, if people are in the 40 Thrive community and if people follow you personally on Facebook, they will see that you have been sharing these posts about baby birds, right? And they're so cute. But what that says more about is that you have the ability to stop and find joy, just pure joy in something as simple as baby birds. And I often am afraid that as grown women, we're so focused on impact that we forget about the joy piece.
That's so interesting. And you're right. And I'll tell you right now, I mean, you know this because you're following, but 2 baby hummingbirds that I was taking a conference call in my husband's car in the driveway. And I noticed this hummingbird, which by the way, like is absolutely my spirit animal. And I noticed this hummingbird like very intentionally going from one area to the next, And so I'm looking and I go, oh my gosh, that's a little tiny nest. And she was going over, getting the nectar and bringing it over to the baby birds. And then you'd see them put their little beaks up and she would feed them. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm still taking this call and I'm trying not to interrupt it. But I'm so fascinated because I had never in my life, I'm almost 49 years old. I had never seen baby hummingbirds in a nest in my entire life. And maybe at 39, I would have gone, oh, that's kind of cute. But at 49, I'm like, this is amazing. I go out and I talk to them like multiple times a day. And I take pictures and I put them on Facebook. And are they getting hundreds of likes? No. But you know what? Maybe there's somebody who's just like, huh. I feel joyful looking at those baby birds. Like, and we're in a crazy time in the world. So why not find joy in those simple things? So thank you for saying that, because I don't know, I'm more committed to that now than ever. Like, impact is awesome and necessary, but I think you make an impact by living a joy-filled life. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. And I would argue that, if you're having a life with impact, that's great. But if there's no joy, then what's the real purpose? Like, I think we all work so hard that you have to stop and live life, and you have to stop and get some joy, right? And, I will tell you, I have found a great deal of joy in the baby birds, because I just think it's that small thing. I am a believer in just stopping and finding the smallest moments. And I'll tell you, one of the things that's really helped me about joy is at the beginning of the year, I have started a new prayer and meditation routine. And part of that prayer and meditation routine includes me, the last thing I do before I go to bed is just to note the 5 things that I'm most grateful for that day, right? And they are the smallest things that actually, like, when I started looking back on them, they're the smallest things that bring me joy. A hug from my son, my daughter and I being silly together, my husband, just, God love him, putting up with again, my crazy, or just, hugging. It's never these big things like, to your point, I got 1 million followers, I did this. It's all those things. It's the dogs that when I walk in the door, greet me and love me unconditionally. And no matter how much of a crappy day I have, I hit that door and these 2 beasts attack me, and like nothing is wrong in the world in that moment, right? And so it's when I find the things that I am most grateful for, I'm sometimes just grateful for the ability to say a prayer and be still long enough. They're things that really just bring joy, right? Pure joy. And I think we need to stay still enough to recognize those moments.
Yeah, I love that so much. And what would number 5 be?
So 5 is grown women define success by their own terms, right? And we talked about this, and I think over time, your definition of success evolves. And I will tell you, we have had some incredible interviews on the podcast. There's 25 episodes up. I can't believe that. It's
I don't even know how you pulled all that off, because you just hit the ground running.
Well, that's kind of me. I am a hit the ground running. But one of the things that I was so amazed by is every single one of our guests said the same thing when asked about, has your definition of success changed? And there's a trend there that, what we see as measures of success when we're younger are pretty different than how we measure success when we're grown, right?
Yes.
And I think giving ourselves permission to say, yeah, you know what? I don't buy into what you think is successful. I buy into what I think is successful, and I'm okay with that, right? I remember a time, and this might be a great example to use. I remember a time, not a really long time ago, my husband made the choice to be a stay-at-home dad several years ago, right? And we have 4 children. And so as a household with a single income, that's a lifestyle choice that we have made that aligns with our values, that aligns with what brings us joy, that it aligns with how we saw success. What's
Right.
interesting though is when you do that, that there are financial payoffs and there's financial sacrifices and there's indulgences that you shift or change. And so I remember being in a certain role and at that time driving an older car and someone saying to me, well, someone at your level really shouldn't drive that car. And, you make enough money that you certainly should drive. And I'm like, my definition of success is not about what I drive. My definition of success has much more to do with the fact that my kids come home to a parent every day,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we've chosen a lifestyle that we're looking to supplement. And there would have been a time in my life, and that was that. I remember having that conversation, quite frankly, right around the time I was turning 40. And there would have been a time in my life where that would have happened, and I would have gone, oh my God, this is how they see me. What's my image? They don't think I'm being successful. Oh my God, well, maybe I need to get a new car. And I just kind of said, screw you. Like, that's not important to me. If that's what success looks like to you, great, bravo, you go do it. Happy for everybody who can. But for me, that's not a success measure, right?
Right. Right. And that's perfect because there are a lot of people where it's like you have to wear the success out on, on your sleeve or on four wheels. And if you actually look at a lot of people who are extremely wealthy, they don't drive the latest and greatest car because it's a car is not an investment. A car,
Depreciates like crazy the minute you
yes.
drive it off that lot. So grown women understand depreciation. How about that, right?
They absolutely do. And the thing is, like, I remember my dad teaching me, never buy a brand new car. And I've gone against that a couple of times. But now I always buy a car that's, a couple of years old. The tires have been kicked enough and because it does lose its value. But I think people who are successful financially start to really prioritize what that means. And I love that you make that point when it comes to success.
Yeah.
So you've launched this podcast. You went from like, hey, I have this idea that I'd love to have you involved with to taking over the world. My goodness. And so tell me what the motivating factor was behind starting this brand, this like powerhouse, or as you say, bold, brilliant, badass brand for women over 40. What was your motivating factor?
When I turned 40, I was the first of my core group of friends to turn 40. And I will tell you, and if any of them are listening, I'm sure they'll comment. I started at 37 being excited about turning 40. So anybody around me, like you would have thought I was a kid turning 16. Like to me, this was like, I get to be grown. Like this was the birthday for me, right? And I looked around and people, you saw these black balloons and people mourning and being sad. And I didn't want people to feel that. So when I turned 40, I was so blessed to celebrate that day with a small group of just wonderful women. And I knew that they were going to do it right. And we had this whole evening planned. And I wanted to be able to say thank you to them. Like, I didn't know exactly what they were going to do, but I knew whatever they were going to do, it was going to be right. So in anticipation of that, I created these gift bags for the women who were there. And part of what I did in those gift bags was to write what was then called the Grown Ass Woman Rules, Rights, and Responsibilities. And it was this set of, here's what it is, grown women. It was a version of this, and it is a version of what you will see on the website if you go to Grown Woman Life. And over the years, like, with that group of women at the time, that would became part of our language. Well, that's how a GAW rolls, or that's how a grown ass woman rolls, or that's what grown women do. And then unfortunately, I moved and lost a bit of cadence with those women. And some of them are still very much in my life and and they're all still important to me. But what I would find, and for the audience, that was when I'm 40, I'm currently 51. What I found is over the years, when someone would say they're turning 40 or, they were struggling, I'd be like, oh, let me send you this. And so I think at times, God, the universe, whatever you believe in, puts a vision in your heart, something that you are meant to bring to life. And I think certainly as I've come into my 50s, I'm very frustrated because I look around and I'm like, where do I find the women who are in my tribe? Where do I find the women who are bold, brilliant, badass, who are not slowing down in their careers, who are looking to start a new season, a new adventure, whatever that adventure may be, and who are really embracing being at this age, because it certainly is a gift. And as I looked around, and that's honestly how I found the 40 Thrive community, because I'm like, who is doing this and who's doing it well? And then, is there a sliver for this? So the seed started honestly 11 years ago.
Wow.
And sat there and were planted and germinated. And then at the end of last year, I just went, it's time to do something with this. And so to your point, I'm so glad you recognize it's so much more than the podcast. It's going to be a whole brand of services that support women like us, who want to be 40 Thrive, right? Like it's for that lifestyle.
Yeah. And I love it because, I mean, first of all, you have such a strong way of showing up in the world. Your attitude and your energy is infectious. I'm sure I'm not the first person to tell you this, but when you are showing up and talking about how you feel and your passion for all things being bold and brilliant, badass over 40, you cannot help but bring people along with you. We're in a time, I believe, where it's less about what we're telling people and more about what we're showing people. And I think you are the epitome of someone who is showing people how to live a grown woman life.
Well, thank you. That means so much to me. And, especially coming from you, because I see that same energy in you. And I think that's exactly what it's about. I want to showcase women. I'm not a unique, right? I do think that I have a role in this. And then I've been given a set of skills so that I can facilitate bringing other people to life. But I want to be that person who highlights, all of these bold, brilliant, badass women. And I want you to be inspired, and I want you to see other people like you. And I want us to come together, and I want us to support each other and create community and create resources to keep us in that way, right? Because I think you are the sum total of the people around you. And if you don't have around you like-minded people to hold you to that bar and say, girl, put your head up, walk in who you are, let's go, then who's going to do that? And I'm honored to be, one of those voices in the world for those women.
Well, you absolutely are. And I think with your skills and your experience in staffing, in understanding the needs of not just employers, but the needs of the world, and then how to teach people who are looking to fill in the gaps how to best show up. It's like you've been training for this for your whole life.
You know what? It's really odd that you say that. So one of my guests on the podcast said that you really kind of asked me questions and brought things out in me. And I was like, do you understand? I've spent my whole life being a recruiter, right? Like obviously I'm in senior leadership and I don't actually spend as much time interviewing now, but I've literally spent my whole life assessing people, right? And getting to know people. I would easily say I've interviewed thousands of people, and over time you get to see common drivers, but you also get to see common needs. And I think when we can get to the point in our community where I can start to be a voice for the common needs of women and women over 40 and women who are bold, brilliant, and badass and need a place to recognize that and connect them to opportunities that allow them to be that, then I've really accomplished something. So I think inspiration is certainly a big part of it. Education is a big part of it. And engagement is a big part of the goal too.
I love it. So I want to dig a little deeper into your experience. So knowing that you were launching this and coming at it with all of your badass experience and your amazing personality. What have you learned? What have you come up against that you're like, I didn't see that coming?
So what's really interesting about this is I am a workaholic. I'm not proud of that, guys. And so maybe between all of us, we can start like Workaholics Anonymous, because I don't necessarily think that that's a good thing. I don't say that with a sense of pride. I say it with a sense of fact. And so I started really obviously planning this late last year and the launch and et cetera. And so two things happened. And I think there's two lessons to be learned here that are top of mind. Not too long after I decided to do this and started planning and starting engaging people, et cetera, in my day job, I took a pretty significant promotion.
At the same time.
Exactly. You guys may be saying, okay, Rocki Howard, how is this a bad thing? Well, guys, I'm a senior leader and run the US region of a global RPO company, a recruitment process outsourcing company. And I say that to give context because my day job is not an 8 to 5 gig, right?
Yeah.
And so my normal way of doing things would have been to throw everything I had into my day job, right?
Right.
Because working hard is one of the things I do. But
and it's paying the bills.
it's paying the bills. And quite frankly, I don't half-ass do anything, right? And so the way that I would have compensated, okay, I'm in this new role, would have been just to throw all of my time into it. But what happened is I had already committed to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the biggest lesson that I had to learn was, one, to set some boundaries, right? And to make space for something that was important to me and what I believed was important to the world. I had to cash in on my previous life lessons to learn how to balance things out. And that's been tough. It was an adjustment because then the tools that I use in my toolkit to be successful at both of these things had to shift and change. So that's been the tough lesson, and making sure that adjustment is gone, or I made it through that adjustment. There hasn't been a lot of sleep, as you can imagine. So
there's no time for that.
Right, there's no time for sleep. I think on the positive thing, the lesson that I really, really learned is the power of reaching out to people and just asking. I was very surprised when I sat down. I had a core list of who I wanted in as my number ones for all of this first set of interviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I had backups because in my world, you don't always get your first choice. So I had this list of first choice, and then I had a backup, and then it's me, Jackie. So I had another backup. And, literally, I should show you the spreadsheet. It's pretty insane. And what I learned, and I was so pleasantly surprised about, is with one exception, all of my first choices said yes. And in certain cases, they were people like you and I who hadn't had a long-standing relationship and took a risk and said, yes, I appreciate what you're doing. I will commit my time. In one case, it was someone I literally had not really spoken to in 8 years. And we picked up like we had just talked yesterday. So I think, guys, first of all, being willing to put yourself out there and ask for help and support. And two, owning your brand, because you never know when you'll come back and want to interact with someone. And so you want to leave your mark with people in a way that they are willing to engage with you if and when you come back around to them.
Absolutely. I recently did a little meme on my business page on Facebook, and because people have asked me multiple times, how do you get such incredible guests on your podcast? And I said, well, I ask them. I mean, it's that simple, because when somebody feels like what you're doing is aligned with where they are and where they want to go, the answer is yes. also people want to connect now more than ever. And so when you have something to offer them in terms of connection, and it's not just like an interview, I try not to interview my guests because I think a conversation is much more, I've got a couple little notes and then I just see where it goes. And like what we're talking about today is nothing that I had written down because it's much more interesting when you're willing to just see what's in front of you, right?
Yeah.
But people, whether it's if you're a podcaster and you're listening or you're doing something else and you're just so afraid to get started, just ask people, right?
Yeah.
You asked me, I said yes. I asked you, you said yes.
It's just that simple. And so it's like, guys, and guess what? Some people are going to say no, but every no gets you closer to the yes. You can't get to the yes without going through the no. So like, get started. And I think the other thing that my husband and I have been talking about a lot, and this comes from my work life. So in my work life, our company has a value of being proud, right? And I thought that that's always really, really been interesting. And so in my work life, we actually used to have a goal where we wanted 100% of our employees to be proud to work for our company. And I got to tell you, that made me proud to go work for this company, that their employees' pride in them meant that much. But what I will tell you is over time, for the people who work with me, what we have talked about is proud is not perfect, right? And there's a difference between proud and perfect. And I always use this example. My husband and I have been together over 30 years, right?
Wow.
There are some days, and girls, let's be honest, there are some days when your spouses, you don't like each other. And my husband is a saint for putting up with me. I am sure there are several days where he just does not like me. There's never a day that he doesn't love me. And there's never a day that he's not proud to be my husband and vice versa. Proud does not mean perfect. And I think a lot of times when we go to put something out in the world, we're waiting for it to be perfect.
Yes.
All I wanted to do was to be proud. I got over that hump of, oh my God, well, it's got to be perfect and it's got to be this and it's got to be that. And I set this deadline and, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss that one. How about I put something into the world that I'm proud of, and then we can tweak as we go.
I recently spoke with, I don't know if you're familiar with Denise Duffield Thomas. She has a book series called Lucky Bitch and Get Rich Lucky Bitch. She wrote that book and she was saying that she's from Australia. So it was half like British English, half American, and so there were definitely people who were confused. She said there were typos in it. She made $10 million from that book.
Is that not insane?
She told me on the podcast, $10 million.
Wow.
And so when people are waiting, and one of the things that she said that I have repeated at least 20 times since then is you can't improve on nothing.
Amen.
And so if you're not willing to put it out there, whatever it is for you, and to put yourself out there, especially when you're not at a place of perfection, what are you waiting for?
Put it out there and you go, oh, you Americans don't know what that word is? Okay, I'll tweak and change it. But at least then there's a conversation about it. And who knows, it might be a $10 million conversation, right? That is insane.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so you're absolutely right. And just getting it out there, and you're living that. I mean, there's not much that you do today, that one does today, that can't be improved upon. I mean, my background is TV, where we would create a show and marketing for the show. And guess what? Like, it was out there and that was it. There was no taking it back and improving on it when it was out there. Those days are very few and far between when it comes to the work that you can do, if it's online, if it's in podcasting. There's always room for improvement. Show up authentically and be yourself and be proud, and then improve it when you can. I love that, Rocki. Yeah. So if you, based on the 25 interviews you've done and like more than being started on this huge journey toward like world domination, what would you say is like the gold? Like what are women telling you over and over and over again? Like you were saying, in your field, in recruitment, you see the problem, right? And you constantly see the same problems, or you see the same solutions. What are you seeing with this mass of women over 40, and how can we understand each other and ourselves and move forward in a productive way?
People want to be their authentic self, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think as you move into being grown, people are caring less about what other people think about them and more about going through the world as their authentic self. And what that means, though, I think for us as women, is we need to give people the space to be authentic. I think when you
Yes.
talk about what does that mean and how can we interact, what that means is I need to make room for special brands of crazy, complementary crazy, because that person is being their authentic self, right? So can we not make space and room for people to be authentic, right? The other theme is around, I think, success. Can we not think that there is one standard of anything, actually? So there's different standards of beauty, there's different standards of success. And can we make space and room to accept that success is defined by someone else's terms? Because let's face facts, we can be pretty judgy. And if you guys think I'm lying, look through your social media feed. Who do we
Mm.
honor? Who do we hold up? It's all these people that have a certain lifestyle that we're all, swiping and liking and tweeting and all of that kind of stuff. And what's the impact that it has? um
Mm.
and then I think there is some other themes that come out about learning lessons. So we've talked a lot about the tough lessons you learn in your career, and a lot of times those lessons are around how do people treat me? How do I respond to being treated that way? And how do I learn to respond better over time? So I think if I think about kind of some core lessons and coming back to this audience and saying, how could we better support each other? It's about how do we give room and space for people to be who they truly are and be authentic with us, because sometimes people are forced to put on a mask because we're so unaccepting. How
Mm-hmm.
do we define success? How do we not do things like, oh yeah, well, she's got on that dress, so I'm not sure she can come sit by me, and did you how do we not do that to each other? And how do we kind of embrace success by our own terms and not judge somebody else by our definition of a success? So how do we make room to come together, leverage all of our life lessons together, go back out to the world as a collective, and actually practice what we preach, and give space to really support each other?
I love that because, we do that. We think this is how I would go through this situation. And so then we judge people for not taking the same steps in their journey. And I love that whole, I don't even know where it comes from, but when you get frustrated in somebody else's choices, oftentimes it's just a mirror of you being frustrated with yourself and certain choices you've made. So take a deep breath and just show up authentically. Commit to living with a joy-filled life, as you said, and let other women do their thing at the same time. Rocki,
Absolutely.
you are truly a gift to the world. And I'm so excited that we met and that we have a long, long life together. I know this. So I really appreciate you.
We decided from our very first conversation that we are sisters from another mother and we're in it together. And I just have to
Absolutely.
thank you for, paving the way. I have to thank you for giving space for people to be 40 Thrive. I have to thank you for, creating a community where people do get to show up. And I really want to thank you for answering the call, because if we're going to say to people, be courageous enough to reach out, as women, we also have to answer the call. Thank you for
Right.
answering my call.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't yet go on over to grownwomanlife.com. Everything is there. And your podcast is on all the podcast platforms, so they can subscribe and rate and review and all of those great things.
Absolutely. And the very first episode is the one with yours truly.
Woo, woo!
And so there's the first intro, but the first real episode, the first 2 episodes are Jackie's. Guys, the energy is off the chain. If you like just a little bit of what you heard today, go hear me be quiet and Jackie talk and share her brilliance with us. And, I certainly, as we start to close up, want to just say to women, please go live boldly. Don't hide in a corner. Showcase your brilliance. Don't be afraid to do that. And go be a badass, women. Go do it.
Yes. There is no better time than right now. I mean, it's proven. Like the work and the impact and the joy that women over 40 are creating right now is off the charts. It's amazing. And so I just appreciate having you, my sister in arms, to like lead the blaze a trail here, because I think if we continue to show up even when it's really uncomfortable, and it gets uncomfortable sometimes when you're like, is this thing on? And, does anyone really want to see my face in a live video? And all those questions that people think they're the only ones who think that. I'll confess, I assume you are the same way, Rocki, right?
Abso-freaking-lutely. Guys, look, let me just tell you, I had no idea what I was doing when I started this thing. Didn't know if I was going to do it right. Had no idea. But you know what? Can I say one other thing that I think is worth calling out? Because you just said to everybody, like, we're sisters in arms. And so I think this is another thing that grown women have to get to. I think for so long, and it could have been because there was scarcity and opportunities, women would think that there couldn't be 2 of us in the same place. And so I think it would pit us in places of competition instead of places of collaboration. And I want you to take away from Jackie and I, our markets are the same, right? And we don't see each other as competition. What we say is, we're going to do this together. Let's share and support each other because we have a common goal. And I think if women did more of that, instead of going, oh, well, you're doing the same. Oh, Jack. Oh, well, she's got that 40 Thrive and I got grown. We can't talk to each other, or we can't support each other. Why don't we get over that? And why don't we just support each other and the goal? And so much will grow and change. If we could get out of that scarcity, competitive mindset that some of us still have and move towards one of collaboration, like, what more could we accomplish?
Amen. And you are absolutely right, because there are millions and millions of women over 40. And not to go into more memes that I've put out, but I think that like the best way to get rid of competition is to collaborate.
Absolutely.
Because we're stronger together. And honestly, if one woman listens to the 2 of us together on this podcast, on your podcast, and says, I'm willing and ready to take a step forward into the life I want, then we've both won.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. I adore you. I'm really grateful for you. And this is just the first of many.
It really is. I can't wait for this audience to see us come together and do other things together. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for having me. 40 Thrivers, thank you so much for listening to me. And we'll see you guys in another project together or something, another collab.
100%. we definitely, and live events sometime in the future for sure.
Yeah.
Rocki, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
All right.
Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. My mission is to reach more and more women over 40 and inspire them to live the life they truly deserve. Until next time, take care and keep thriving.